Hey everyone, it's Brenda again with Three Uniques. I'm really excited to introduce you to Chantel Chapman. She is a mindful money educator here in Vancouver, Canada. Hi Chantel, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Brenda?
I'm good. So great to have you on. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is a mindful money educator? Sorry, it's a twister.
I know it's a hard one to say three times. I am a mindful money educator, or I'm a trauma-informed money educator. So essentially, what that is I educate folks around personal and entrepreneurial financial literacy, but I do it through a trauma-informed lens, or a mindfulness-based lens. And what that means is we actually start at a foundational level, exploring um, beliefs that we have that may have been developed from generational, relational, societal, or systemic trauma, and experiences in our lives. And we explore that, and then we move into ways to basically disempower some of those beliefs and then empower the affirmations that we want. And then from there, we work on our financial literacy. So I own three businesses. So one of them is called What the Finance Is. And this is my kind of umbrella brand where I do public speaking. I host workshops all around entrepreneurial finance, personal finance. And I do some coaching there. I don't have a ton of space, but I have opened up a little bit of time for coaching on that business. Another business I have is called the Trauma of Money Method. And my Trauma of Money Method business is an online school that certifies professionals in the method that I use when I do host events around money. So a lot of our students would be therapists or financial professionals, or we have a lot of people who work in community economic development, or work in entrepreneurial program development for universities. So we certify them so they can basically use our method in whatever work that they're doing. I also have another business called School by K&P, and K&P stands for Castor and Pollux, which is the name of my business partner's consulting agency in Toronto. And School by K&P is an online, very accessible school for people who are interested in entrepreneurship with a focus on design. So we have 5 online courses that are taught by what we would call like influencers and people who have essentially created their own businesses in not a traditional sense. And those are the leaders of the course. And all of our courses are based on a 1-for-1 model. So every single time we sell a course, we give a free one away to someone who is coming from a marginalized community.
Amazing. And focused on people that are like want to take their design business off the ground. So they could be an artist.
Yeah, like I would say more like creative business. I shouldn't say design. We're very design forward. So we use like a lot of design elements in our branding and in our content and everything. So we're very design forward, but we do appeal to creative entrepreneurs. So a lot of our students are freelancers, maybe graphic designers, photographers, stylists, anyone kind of who's in the like creative entrepreneurial realm.
Got it. Okay. And
Yeah.
then the trauma coaching that you do around the mindful money practice, do you focus on like a certain gender? Do you target your content more towards male or female, or, is it, because I think that, I'm speaking like from a woman's background, and I remember like
Yeah.
hearing you speak before, when we talk about generational knowledge around money, there's a lot of statistics out there that say that women are less prone to, like, say, investing, or,
Mm-hmm.
but they're now starting to get into that more as we're seeing more women entrepreneurs taking risks with their
Mm-hmm.
finances and, investing in themselves and investing in their own organizations. So what's
Yeah.
your kind of thought on that?
Well, so yeah, What ends up happening is we typically attract clients and businesses who are similar to ourselves. So what's happened in my business is it's mostly females. It's mostly women who are wanting to essentially improve their relationship with money, whether it be on the personal side or the business side, who are coming to me and doing my workshops. Same with our trauma of money method. We do try and offer more of a gender neutral brand, but I would say probably 95% of our students are female, which is really interesting. We had some feedback from some of our male students in the last cohort saying that they would love to see more men, but they do believe that there's more stigma for a man to show up in a room and be like, this is my money trauma, because it's like, for them, they were communicating that it's actually considered a big weakness to talk about their relationship with money in a negative way. So that could have something to do with it as well, the low attendance of men in our program.
Yeah, it often comes up with a lot of my coaching clients too. Like, I mean, the limitations that they set upon themselves as far as going after the vision that they want in their life. And they'll use like, that excuse or, maybe a reality check, so to speak, around, well, I don't have the money, so I can't go after this vision.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's, it might be, something that there's sort of a barrier that they're putting up, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's reality. So
yeah.
Fascinating. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we're here today, though, to find out about your 3 uniques, and I'm really excited to hear about them, especially because like you've got such an entrepreneurial background. So how about it? Let's hear your 3 uniques tonight.
Okay, so I'm a philosopher. I'm a connector of ideas, and I'm compassionate.
Okay, awesome. So we were talking about this before we started recording, but I'm curious like how you came up with those. Like, was there a process? Like, have you done an exercise like this before?
No, I've never done an interview like this before. And even like having my bio, I didn't write my bio. I had to have someone else write it because it is so uncomfortable to talk about yourself. And I actually do a lot of work in the 12-step recovery world. So in my recovery program, I attend a lineage of recovery it's Codependency Recovery, and as well as Al-Anon recovery. So it's essentially we work on healing the wounds of a child growing up in a family with addiction or any dysfunction. So that's the program that I work. And in that program, we do so much work around basically like not magnifying any of your own emotions, because oftentimes like when there is some like childhood relational trauma, especially around addiction, you can really fall into a state of victimness. And so it was so interesting to like go through this exercise of coming up with my strengths when I'm at the same time I've worked so hard on not making like my pain or my victimness like the center of the universe.
Right.
So it's really interesting because it's kind of going like in our recovery program, we work on like, you're not the piece of shit of the center of the universe, as they would say in the program. And life and recovery is about service and being of service to others, and so it goes kind of against that. And then I also have like my spiritual lens, and looking at it through my spiritual lens, we move from like victim consciousness into like I'm the creator, and then into a consciousness of like surrender, like things are just kind of happening through me. So even at that lens, I'm like, unique, like this feels uncomfortable to say because it's too individualistic. And not of the philosophy and the basically beliefs of like the interconnectedness that I really subscribe to. So I was like, I asked a whole bunch of friends, and I wonder how many people do that. Like ask people like, what do you think my unique strengths are? what's unique about me? So I asked quite a few friends, and it was interesting to hear their answers. A lot of them were like, you need to you need to come up with it on your own. And that was them just, you know, being like, okay, this is your work, which I really appreciated.
Pushing it back on you.
Yeah, yeah. And then I was like thinking about this, and I'm like, what are they? And all I could think of was all the questions that I had for you. I was like, how do people do this? Like, in what sense are you talking about, you know, uniques? And, you know, I just had so many questions. And then it made me realize, like, oh, yeah, that's what I do. I ask questions. I am, to my core, a philosopher.
Right.
Like, I'm so curious. I love to ask questions, and I love to learn about everything. And I'm also not really stuck in a certain way of thinking. And linear thinking is not my thing. I'm very much like a ladder hacker. I'm a non-linear thinker, and that really plays into my role as an entrepreneur. And so one of my friends said to me, after I came to this conclusion, she said, you are definitely very open-minded, and you never get stuck in a certain way of thinking. So I'm like, yes, philosopher. And then I guess the next one, I said connector of ideas. This one is the sister to like my philosophy nature. And that's like when I start exploring different ideas, I'm really good at connecting them to basically create a new idea. So there's an author that I used to read quite a bit named James Altucher, and he talks about this concept called idea sex, where every day you just like write down ideas to like work on the idea muscle, and then take one idea and have idea sex with the other idea, and then you come up with this new idea. It's like connecting these ideas, and this is where like some really amazing innovation can lie, through this concept of idea sex. And I'm very good at this. Like, I feel like this is something that is pretty unique to me. So yeah, so that was the journey. Oh, I also did a Strengthsfinder test as well.
Awesome.
Because I'm like, oh, I wonder what that'll say. So that actually validated the philosophy, the connector of ideas. You know, the Strengthsfinder was like strategy. I think it even said, I don't know, curious thinker or something like that. I don't remember.
I think there's an ideator strength. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
And then your third unique, because you shared your first one with us and your second one. So, and
Yes.
your third unique, what's that?
So my third one is compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even kind of uncomfortable to say this, because I'm like, that's so basic. Like, so many people must say that. And you know, that was actually feedback that I got from a few friends, like, you're very compassionate. And I'm very compassionate. You know, compassion runs through every single thing that I do. And, you know, sometimes I'm compassionate to a fault, where it can essentially, you know, if we have compassion on the scale, and one side of that could essentially show up as codependency, which is an addiction that I work through. So, yeah, that was another question that I wanted to explore with you. Like, I wonder how many of these uniques are on a scale, and like, what's the polarity of them, you know, because for every like good quality, too much of it, does it become negative? That's where my mind was going.
Yeah, well, even Marcus Buckingham has a viewpoint on that, and he's obviously the one that, you know, contributed to creating the Strengthsfinder. And he'll talk about like there's no sort of overuse of a strength, right? It's continue to maximize it. And, you know, a lot of times in like the business world, or like when we're evaluating performance, we'll talk about your strengths and your weaknesses, or we'll sugarcoat it and say your developmental areas. And he actually kind of kiboshes the whole idea around your developmental areas, is that like, once you figure out what your strengths are, like, play to your strengths all the time, and then ensure that, you know, your work, your relationships, you know, the situations that you're putting yourself into really help you maximize your strengths.
Yeah.
And, you know, and if this is something like, you know, you bring up the word compassion, and number one, I want to give you credit and recognize you for being compassionate because, it's 2020 and there's been a lot of crappy things that have happened to people this year. And so if we have people on the planet that are compassionate to other human beings, that's kind of a good thing because the world needs a lot of compassion right now. So, that's where, if you're talking to Marcus Buckingham, he would say, play that up, like double down on that, share as much of that as you possibly can, Chantel, because the world needs it. Because we also know that not everybody has compassion or plays that up, right? So when you're talking about the spectrum, like I would say, all human beings have a dose of compassion, but some people are going to turn up that dial more than others. If you're the one that's on the max scale, great. Like that helps compensate for people that are on the low scale, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that balances out in the world. So I think I kind of always, when I read Strengthsfinder years ago and I did my, first strengths assessment, and I've done it like a few times, there's ones that sort of stay the same. And I'm just like, okay, they're there for a reason. And when I do talk to friends and family or coworkers and they validate that, I'm like, okay, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes it may like drive someone crazy, right? Or they might be frustrated with the fact like, oh, Chantal, you're so compassionate. Like, really? Is that really a big problem?
Yeah. Well, I guess it comes down to like, what's the motivation for it?
Yeah.
So, and this is why I said like on the scale. So I guess this is like an internal scale of the compassion. Like, what's the motivation? Because, like, especially I use the word codependency, like that niceness and like constantly giving can show up in a way where it basically puts ourselves in a state of lack. So it's like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure. It's interesting view by the person who wrote Strengthsfinder, completely different from, the recovery work that I do, right? Because it's like, so for people who are very kind, very compassionate, if they're not like really in touch and aware with their motivation of that, and if their motivation is good, it's like you're being compassionate for a good reason, and it's not like, oh, I'm super compassionate because I've learned as a child that I'm safe if I'm nice and constantly giving to everyone.
Right.
And the moment I'm not nice or constantly giving to everyone, I'm unworthy and I'm not safe.
Right.
Right.
And
So
bad things will happen to me. I go back to it's like 3 uniques plus your purpose, right? So what are the things that make you unique? I think those come from like skills, abilities. It's going to be, the things that you're passionate about and even your experiences, right? So, like, have you traveled a lot? Have you worked for Fortune 500 companies? And not to say that everyone needs to have the same list of experiences, but your experiences, my experiences, your talents, your abilities, my talents, that's what makes us unique, right? Those combinations. And then I think coupled with defining what's my purpose. So how do I pick my 3 uniques and channel that for good? So even the example of a small child thinking, okay, I need to be compassionate and be helpful for everybody, channeling that towards good versus a limiting belief that if I'm not doing those things, something bad could happen to me, or as a consequence if I don't do these things. Versus I have a purpose, it's really well defined, it's well intentioned, and it's not being generated from a place of limiting belief. It's being generated from a place of my 3 uniques and what I want in the world.
Beautiful. I love how you said that. That's really beautiful. And I heard one time, purpose is the intersection between, something that was painful that you may have experienced,
Sure.
the change that you want to see in the world, and skills that you have.
Right.
So yeah, that really kind of ties into like someone may be compassionate because of pain they've experienced.
Yeah. Well, and even people that are starting up their business, like, I know people out there that are starting up their consulting businesses or coaching business, and through their past experience, maybe like working in organizations where leaders weren't, servant leaders, giving back to their employees, making sure that their employees shined and were developed and coached and recognized for their abilities. And so, their drive, one of their drivers is to make sure that organizations do that. And so they want So they know that that's a need, and their past experience, like their lived experience going through, say, bad leadership, that now they're starting their consulting practice to create better leaders out there. So, that's where I think you can take that negative and flip it to a positive, because you've got now this defined purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I
and then
love it.
that's what's driving you, not the fear that bad leadership is going to be around you every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, beautiful reframe. I
Well,
love
that
it.
helped. But thanks for sharing your 3 uniques with us. I have a couple more questions for you if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So this is actually kind of an interesting question. I took this from like Tim Ferriss's book, which is his Tribe of Mentors book. And he asked a question about what purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months?
Whoa, that's a great question.
Especially because you're in the, finance, mindful money world. And it can be like an object, it can be an experience. And it can be something that you regularly buy too. That's $100 or less. Doesn't have to be like
yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, it's hard for me to nail down one specific thing. I can give you an example, but I do have a practice that I do anytime I feel in lack or in scarcity. I use my money. I use my money as a way to be of service. So I might donate. So I might make a donation somewhere, or I might buy my little niece something, or, buy lunch for a friend, which is so powerful, because it really can essentially like shift that consciousness that you're in of like scarcity and lack, and it feels very abundant to be able to give, even if it's just a small amount, even if it's just $5.
Yeah.
Just kind of to move that energy a bit. So that's what's coming to mind. I think I'd have to sit with that and think about it to give you a more specific example.
No, that's good. I do something similar. Like, I think like those moments where I'm feeling maybe a little bit anxious about money, it's like that's a time to just sort of lean into it and go, okay, like how can I flip that to make myself feel more abundant?
Yeah.
And like the world feel more abundant, like it's more of a place of giving. I love that.
Yeah.
So given the fact that we have less than 100 days left on 2020, and we know that many of us had probably some plans hijacked this year due to COVID and travel restrictions or just physical distancing restrictions, what's one thing that you're really focused on doing, accomplishing, like a goal that you've got, like that you want to get done in the next 100 days or less now?
So I would say that my online school by KMP, we actually are restructuring it. And our goal actually for the rest of this year is to really nail down what the structure of that is. We had an incident where a like celebrity entrepreneur basically copied our design and our slogan and many elements of our brand. And we had, it was a really interesting experience, because we came together and we're like, oh my gosh, like this person completely like copied all these things.
Wow.
And we were feeling very discouraged, because we would do like a special photo shoot for the brand, and we would do it with like 3 people, and she would have like 20 people on that same photo shoot.
Right.
So she did what she took our vision and she basically like added $1 million to it. So it amazing what she did. It's like cool to see the potential. It looks
Right.
incredible.
Yeah.
Right. And but then we were noticing we were feeling so kind of deflated, like, oh, like we're bootstrapping this, like we created this business to make really accessible education. And so it actually made us have to reflect back to our entire strategy of why we did this.
Mhm.
And why we did it was we wanted to offer education that was accessible to people who made their own path without access to traditional, like maybe traditional access to capital, or funding from friends and family and things like that. So we went back to that. We're like, oh my gosh, we actually really need to restructure this so it's more community driven, and it's not so much about her and I as the founders and we created this, and we want to really like highlight a community. And so we want to shift that more into a social enterprise, versus more of a traditional business model, because that's not what we're really marketing. So we want our business model to match what we're essentially selling and marketing. So we're working on that right now, and our goal is to have that really nailed down and to bring on new partners by the end of the year. So 100 days to do that. It sounds scary,
That's
but we can do it.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And, even in the situation where, again, it's kind of like that situation where you can take something that's maybe bad that happened to you in that sense of like, your idea being taken. But it also gets you into that generative mode again, right? Which,
Yeah.
sometimes like even when we've got a good thing going, it's like we've got to always stay in that generative role. So good thing that you guys have got some good partnership and you're able to do that this year.
Yeah.
Good luck
Yeah.
with that.
Thank you.
Well, Chantel, thank you so much for being on today and sharing your 3 uniques with us. It's been fabulous getting to hear about, your evolution to get to them, and just even the conversation that we had about 3 uniques and just how it aligns to your purpose, right? And how you can use them to propel yourself forward. So thanks again for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for everybody that's listening, just remember to get out there and share your 3 uniques, just like Chantel did and anyone else that I've been interviewing. It's really important to get it out there. You never know who you're going to come across. And, when I think about how people have been displaced this year through, jobs, et cetera, and like companies closing up, I know the traditional way is to go and apply for jobs. Please keep doing that, but also get out there and share your 3 uniques, because not every job is going to come through a job application site. Not every recruiter is going to see your resume. So get out there and start sharing your 3 uniques. Thanks again, Chantel. Take care.
Thanks.